The Octopus Hitman. Listener discretion advised.
In 1971, two horseback riders discovered a gruesome scene of a young woman partially clothed, shot 3 times and her skull brutally crushed. With no suspects, this crime became a cold case for over 30 years. This is the story of Betty Cloer.
Welcome to the first episode of The Octopus Hitman. Now, first I want to introduce the hosts of our podcast. We have Mark on my right.
Hello.
And he is our technical wizard, generally doing all the things with digital diodes and things of that nature. And, of course, on my left, we have James.
Hello, everyone.
And James is really a bookworm by nature.
I'm the brain.
Yeah, he does a lot of the research. And then I am Bill, and I just ride on the coattails of these guys. I let them do all the work, basically. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on why we are doing this podcast. The three of us have been doing a podcast totally unrelated to true crime. And we always had talked about doing a true crime podcast specifically on this subject. In general terms, we've known about this character since, 1996? Mm-hmm. We went down a rabbit hole back then, and we knew this would be a great subject, but it's so damn complicated that it's almost impossible to tell in an organized way.
Yeah, I didn't learn about it till much later, actually, till 2020.
Yeah.
It was crazy when I first heard about it. I just thought to myself, this can't be real.
Yeah, because of that complexity, we decided to scrap the idea originally. This was like about a year ago. And that was until we opened up Netflix one day. We saw a documentary that lightly touched on this person. It was called American Conspiracy: The Octopus Murders.
It's pretty good. If you like that type of show, if you haven't watched it yet, make sure you log into your Netflix and watch it ASAP.
And it sparked us to actually begin interest in this again.
Right. It really got us inspired, really, if you want to make it.
Correct.
So it's an amazing documentary. It really could not be told in the 4 episodes that Netflix gave its creators. It's a really complex story. More specifically, it hardly touched on our character, but for a mere, 15 or 20 minutes or so. And he just might be the scariest thing about the show. So with our knowledge, we will do our best to provide you with one of the most intriguing and terrifying individuals that you've never heard of.
It was 1971, and 21-year-old Betty Cloer lived in Sacramento, having just moved from Eugene, Oregon, 2 months ago, looking for a better life. She found a job as a beautician and rented an apartment. She had also recently moved her 5-year-old son, Robert Cloer, down to Sacramento as well, just 2 weeks prior. On the summer evening of June 18th, Betty Cloer went to a dance club in Sacramento with her friends Karen Chappelle and Robin Messner. Karen was Betty's co-worker, and Robin and Betty lived in the same apartment complex in Sacramento. They asked Robin's younger sister to babysit Robert at Robin's apartment while they went out. Sometime later that evening, Robin left the club with her then-boyfriend, while Karen and Betty stayed to dance a bit longer, finally leaving the club around 1 a.m. in Karen's car.
You know, it's interesting. It reminds me, when I thought about it, that Betty came from a small town, Eugene, Oregon, about 50,000 people in that small town. It's a town where it's just, everybody knows everybody to a certain extent. You and I grew up in a small town, went to high school.
Yeah.
And so you leave your door unlocked. There's really not a lot of crime, even today.
And it's Oregon. I mean,
Oregon.
This is a great place to live, even now, today.
And she got pregnant at the age of 16.
She was unwed.
Yep.
Okay.
So I'm not trying to be funny, but there's not a lot to do in a small town. You meet people, you hang out with people, you do things that your parents shouldn't know about, and then you go back to school. There's nothing else to do. Watch the local football game, cruise down to the local malt shop. It's not a lot to do.
The interesting part for me is she moved down to Sacramento without her son.
And did she have a friend here, or she just randomly decided Sacramento was the place to be?
Couldn't find out how she got down here.
Right. That's interesting.
Much bigger town than Eugene. Much more connected. Lots more to do down here.
Yeah, she probably came down, maybe met with friends, tried to figure out if she liked the city or not, left her son up there for a little while, and then said, hey, I want to stay here, brought her son down.
Yeah, because you think about it, there's a lot of people that live in Sacramento that know people in Eugene, even back then. Vice versa, you knew people from Oregon that moved to California to Oregon.
Yeah.
So, again,
and we all, by the way, we all live in Sacramento, so this is our hometown.
California always has an allure. It always has. Mm-hmm. Ever since the golden Hollywood days. Move to California, it's going to be so much better.
Well, the weather's so much better than Eugene.
Well, that's true.
This is true. This is very true.
I don't knock her either. I mean, probably the club life was far superior down here.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about it. In a small town like that, you have a corner bar. I mean, you're hanging out at the corner bar after you watch the local softball game. That's really all you're doing. So down here, they had dance clubs. I don't think there's dance clubs in,
there had to be a dance club in Eugene. Come on.
Really?
Yeah.
It's a college town.
I don't think there is anymore. I still don't think there's a dance club in Eugene. I could be wrong.
It's like you said, it's a college town.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But you know what? I mean, like Mark and I both came from a very small town. There is this allure. You want to get out of the small town. When you're in a town like that, you have a reputation. If it's not the reputation that you want to get out and just start anew. Right?
Yeah, it's true.
So,
okay, so they stopped at a Texaco gas station on Madison Avenue to use the bathroom behind the back of the station near a vending machine. When Karen pulled into the station, she saw a vehicle at the back of the station and a tall, young man of medium build with dark hair standing next to his car. She later identified the vehicle to be a white Oldsmobile. Karen went in to use the bathroom while Betty remained behind in the car. When Karen came out of the bathroom, she saw the man just getting into his car. The man pulled out of the gas station and Karen decided to follow him. The two cars pulled up side by side and Betty rolled down her car window to speak to the dark-haired man. Betty, enamored by the man, told Karen the guy was a fox and thought he was going to follow them.
How fun.
Picking up people at night. 21 years old. Did you ever pull up to a car and be like, hi, girls?
Yeah. And back then, car culture was big, right? So it was probably that kind of an attitude.
I was just enthralled by the vending machine by the bathroom because what a great pickup line. Oh, Henry, because they had that candy bar back then.
Well, I always wondered, it just said vending machine. Was it a smoke machine? It was 1971.
Oh, that's right. Cigarettes.
The back of the station, it could have been for smokes.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yep.
A pack of Marlboros. When the two women arrived at Betty's apartment, the dark-haired man pulled his car up behind them. Betty got out and told Karen she was going back to talk with him for a bit. As she walked back toward the man's car, Karen drove away. Sometime between 1 and 2 a.m., Betty arrived at her apartment where her roommate, Elizabeth Ford, was sleeping on a couch in the living room. Betty told her that she was going to Lake Tahoe and needed a coat. She left the front door open, and Elizabeth could see a tall, dark-haired man standing outside. Elizabeth did not see his face, though. Betty hurriedly grabbed her coat and left with the man. According to Elizabeth, she was the only person in the apartment when Betty arrived to get her coat. Betty then went to Robin's apartment to let her know that she was going to Lake Tahoe. Robin also saw a tall man with dark hair standing outside as her friend quietly left with the mysterious man. That was the last time anyone saw Betty Cloer alive.
Not so surprising. It really isn't. I mean, I'm going back to the small town thought. If you have any experience at all that she's been in Sacramento, she's probably thinking, you know what, everyone I'm with and everyone I know is pretty trustworthy. I come from a small town. People are trustworthy. Sure, I'm going with a stranger up to Tahoe, but back then it's not like it is today that every corner is going to be something horrid happening to you.
It's 1971. That was a lot of sex going on in 1971.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And going up to Tahoe is not a big deal. I mean, it's only an hour and a half away from us.
Yeah, there was a lot of free love and people would meet and hook up like that.
And Tahoe is, if you're living in Sacramento, that's exciting. And if you came from Eugene, that's even more exciting. I get to see Lake Tahoe. It's a national treasure. People know this lake.
You're 21 years old. There's a tall, dark, haired, handsome guy that she thinks is a fox offering to take her up to Lake Tahoe. She's been out dancing. Why not?
You understand, Lake Tahoe is the baby version of Vegas. Also.
Yeah.
I mean, Frank Sinatra and all Marilyn Monroe, they all went to Tahoe.
Yeah, that's true. North Shore was at Calneva. That was a Rat Pack area.
And then South Shore did have casinos, so it was very exciting.
It was almost like the stepchild. Reno might be the little sister, and then Tahoe might be
we don't talk about that sister.
The red-headed stepchild of the casino world.
It was beautiful, but you gambled just a little bit when you went up there.
Yeah, so I don't discredit her for taking that trip. That just makes sense. Let's have some fun.
Yeah, again, it's hard to transpose yourself from this time to then, but it was the 70s.
Sure.
Yeah.
Betty's body was discovered at approximately 1 p.m. the following afternoon, June 19th, 1971, in an isolated field in Cameron Park, California, located just 10 miles west of the town of Placerville, by two young girls on horseback. She was found lying on her back and was nude except for her bra. She had been beaten, raped, and had 3 gunshot wounds, one each to the head, chest, and arm. She had suffered such crushing blows to the head that she was unrecognizable. Items of her clothing were discovered strewn about the area around the body. There were stains on Betty's panties that police said were still moist. Officers found several .32 caliber shell casings, a .32 caliber bullet, and a set of keys.
Well, first of all, I was hoping to get through this podcast without you saying the word moist. So thanks. I appreciate it.
Well, not anymore.
Yeah.
It's always a rough word.
Oh, man. I feel bad for those 2 young girls.
It's a beautiful summer day.
Yeah, you're going out for a nice little ride.
Yeah.
And then, hello.
You find a body.
Well, I mean, I can't imagine. I'm trying to imagine riding on a horseback and finding a body when I'm with my friend.
Well, and think about it. In 1971, you didn't have your cell phone.
Right. So what do you do?
Somebody's got to ride back. Does one stay? Do you both ride back?
I know. That's crazy.
Because I wouldn't want to stay with a dead body in case the killer was nearby.
I'm having to think both girls rode back.
Quickly.
Her face has been crushed in. I'm thinking the girls rode back together.
That would be terrifying.
Unless one's, a little dark and edgy. Maybe she stayed, but...
They didn't have emo back then.
Oh, yeah, they did.
You think so?
Oh, yeah, they did.
Yeah, that's just, it didn't take long. So obviously he wasn't trying to hide the body. It was a crime of maybe passion or something. And then he left.
Oh, sure. I'm always willing to crush in my passionate lover's face.
Because he didn't try and bury her. He didn't try and hide her.
No.
He left her out in the open.
Yeah. He just treated her like it didn't matter at all. Like she wasn't even a human being.
But she's shot 3 times.
But you would think if you committed a crime, you would try and hide or cover up that crime. He made no attempt. Left it out in the field. Mm-hmm. Throw some bushes on her. Dig a hole, something. Take her body and throw it in a ditch. He left it there.
Was she alive after getting shot 3 times that he had to crush her skull in?
I think it was so she wouldn't be recognized. It's 1971.
Yeah, they didn't have DNA then, right? So
there was no CSI TV shows. Smash her face in to make her unrecognizable. They might not know who she is. I mean, they had dental records and everything, but are you thinking about that at the time? I'm going to just make it so they don't know who she is.
Right. Yeah, if her teeth are all smashed in, they might not even be able to do a dental record.
Bingo.
And that's what he was probably thinking.
That's a very personal crime.
But again, put yourself at the time period. We're so used to CSIs and podcasts about murder and all these ways to get away with it. Back then, it was pretty simple.
Yeah. Did they even have profiling back then? I don't think they did. Or it was just beginning.
It was just beginning.
Yeah.
Police worked independently of each other. There wasn't a big national crime database that everybody was in, especially Cameron Park, Placerville in 1971. There was a sheriff and a deputy.
Yeah, that's probably right.
And maybe a police force of 4.
Right.
I can't think it was very big back then.
And back in those days, they would compete against each other. They would, hey, it's my jurisdiction and that kind of stuff. They didn't work together. So
it's a summer day. Okay, it's not cold. It's probably warming up. It's 1 p.m. when those 2 horseback riders found her. It only takes an hour and a half to get from Sacramento to Tahoe. So there was a lot of time that passed from when she left, almost 24 hours. If her panties were still moist, sorry, I had to throw that word in since you didn't want it. You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Then It just seems strange that she probably was with her killer for a while.
Not really. We're talking 12 hours.
We're talking 12 hours
But
or
it's
less.
a warm summer day, guys. Something's going to dry pretty quickly. And I'm just being logical here. And again, there's no CSI.
What if she's in the shade? There are trees.
Forest area, yeah.
Yeah, doesn't say. Police later received a telephone call from a woman who said her daughter, Elizabeth Ford, had a roommate who fit the description of the person found on June 19th. Officers met with Elizabeth Ford, Robin Messner, and Karen Chappelle. The officers also visited the Texaco station where Karen said she had first seen the dark-haired man they suspected of the murder. The officers spoke with the attendants and examined credit card slips for gasoline purchases the evening of the murder. The officers made a list of the license plate numbers from the credit card slips. They later ran those numbers against Department of Motor Vehicle records to determine the registered owners. However, with no real obvious leads, the case was dropped.
That was crazy because you're writing your license plate number on the credit card slip back then.
Yeah, that's what they did.
Cha-chunk.
Yeah,
Cha-chunk.
you're using manual credit cards.
If you were born, 20 years ago, you have no idea what that is.
Nope.
You're 20, 30 years old. You don't know what it is.
You would go today, you just scan your card, you gave it over to the person, they put it on this machine with a carbon copy.
Yep. And then I guess, a lot of times the gas station attendant's going to write your license down and all that stuff. In case you
signed
bounce a
it.
check, yeah.
Yep.
You could be paying with a check,
Back then, a credit card wasn't a normal thing.
No, it wasn't.
It was kind of a new thing to have a credit card.
I don't even think women were allowed to have credit cards back then. I'm not even kidding. I think it was in the mid-70s.
Really?
Yeah,
So we don't even know if the guy that was at the vending machine near the bathrooms even got gas.
Nope.
Yeah. No cameras, no witnesses other than the girls saw it.
No, they ran the stuff and they didn't connect any of their leads. In July 2002, the Betty Cloer case was reopened. The bra and panties found at the murder scene were taken to the California Department of Justice Crime Lab for DNA analysis. Sperm cells were found on the panties, and the DNA from those cells was compared to the convicted offender database. A match was found to a Philip Arthur Thompson. Further investigation ensued, which included obtaining a saliva sample from him. The DNA from that sample matched the sample from Betty's panties that were found at the scene. Additionally, Thompson was 6 feet 4 1/2 inches tall with dark hair. He matched the description given by the witnesses. Thompson was married to Diana Saylor, and in 1971, he and Diana moved to a home on V Street in Sacramento, which was roughly 6 miles from the victim's apartment. In 2003, investigating officers located and questioned Diana, who recalled losing some keys in 1971. When the officer showed her the keys that had been found at the murder scene, her eyes got wide, and she immediately grabbed the keys and started rubbing a stone attached to the keychain. She said the keychain did look very familiar to her.
Wow.
I know where V Street is and I know where Madison Avenue is, and it's a good 10 to 15 minute drive, even back then, to go from,
Yes, 6 miles.
Yeah, from basically the, gas station over to where he lived.
Think about the keys. I don't know about you, but like my key ring, I have the lanyard.
Right.
And if I was to 20 years from now, I recognize this, right? Because I have that lanyard all the time.
I'm just trying to understand. They found a set of keys? And what's interesting to me is, well, how did he get home? Were they the keys to his car?
Didn't say they were car keys. They were just a set of keys.
Oh,
they could have been house keys.
Gotcha.
They never really say what the keys were. And the keys actually are a big point of discussion in the case. Because rarely do you mention keys from the coroner.
Interesting.
Right? Or the police. You're looking at more of the crime, and it was like, oh, and there's these keys.
Right.
Huh. So that was a question mark for a while.
If I lost a pair of keys today and 20 years from now you showed them to me, I'd be like, I don't know. Those are my keys, maybe.
But if there was a stone attached to them,
That was
you had a certain specific key thing on. The keys I get, but your key ring
always has something, a Hello Kitty or something.
Whatever.
There, right? Yeah, exactly.
that you recognize.
Yeah.
Would you recognize that 20 years later?
Maybe I forget everything, though. I don't know if I'll remember you, let alone a pair of keys.
You have Hello Kitty on your keyring?
No, I do not.
Because I would definitely convict you if that was the case.
As a matter of fact, I have lost my keys. I'm not even kidding.
Officers also discovered that one of the credit card slips examined at the Texaco station contained license plate number DUK323. However, the name on the slip was not legible. That number was registered to Thelma and Richard Hart and was associated with a 1965 Oldsmobile convertible, white.
What?
Although it was not known at the time, Thelma and Richard Hart were Thompson's mother and stepfather. The officers involved in the case never investigated Thompson in connection with the murder. Sometime later, Thompson was convicted of unrelated criminal offenses, including solicitation to commit murder and being accessory after the fact to murder. And a biological sample was obtained from him for DNA analysis and entered into the California State Convicted Offender Databank.
So what I'm shocked by is I know this, right? I know the history of this case. But what's interesting to me, it took 30 years for them to come back with that license plate number that was registered to the Harts, but it was for a white Oldsmobile, which happened to be the same car that was at the station with the guy at the vending machine.
Yeah, so just
30 years.
Shoddy police work. They find it. There's no real signature. It belongs to a couple, and they're like, In 1971, there's probably lots of 1965 Oldsmobiles around.
So they never went and interviewed them or anything?
Not that I could find. No.
Wow.
Are you kidding me?
Probably
Wow.
they went, yep, it was you guys. Okay, no biggie.
And they're like, it wasn't us. We weren't there.
Okay, but let me clarify. When did they put his DNA in the database?
When he was convicted of those two crimes.
Right. So was that in
Accessory
the
to murder?
80s? I mean, because DNA, I know it was
Didn't come about till 1987.
Well, in
so
2002, the case was reopened.
Okay.
So the DNA didn't get tested till 2002 when they reopened the case.
With
For
Benny
his.
Cloer's DNA. But what about his own? Like, did they prick some blood or get a hair sample and then get his?
Yeah, that's what it said.
In 2002.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
That makes sense.
And a biological sample was obtained from him and a DNA analysis and entered into the California State Convicted Offender Database.
So 87 was when they started using DNA. They were started to actually collect it and believe they could use it for evidence. In the 90s is when it started to become
Right. It's
more
OJ,
used.
right? We're
Yes,
introduced
more
to
and more used
DNA,
for DNA.
as a nation, as a world with OJ Simpson.
And so what it sounds like is once they started to do their investigation, they realized once it got reopened, hey, this guy was the son of Thelma and Richard Hart. We probably might want to check him out.
I just can't believe the police never went and talked to Thelma and Richard Hart. Oh, by the way, your son, where was he on this night? He
They might
borrowed
have-
your car?
But there probably might have been a perfectly good alibi. Maybe they didn't know he got their car. It was 1971.
Okay, so we know this story, and we also know that Richard Hart was a police officer, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So if they did go and interview him, it's very possible they said, "Oh, you're a cop. Okay, all right, we'll see you later."
Correct.
Yeah.
And you got to think police work. They might not have said, we're looking for a darker guy. They go see him. You're a cop. You're with your wife. Okay.
Oh my gosh, if I'm going to
X-nay
commit
you guys off the list.
if I'm going to commit a crime and my father's a cop, hello, yes, of course I'm going to do that.
Yeah,
It makes it so much easier for me to get away with it.
probably.
My dad's going to protect me. I'm good.
Yeah, he's speeding. He's got a body in the car. Oh, well, you're registered to your dad's cop? Okay, we'll let you go. In the 70s, there's all that going on, right?
Yeah. And think about it. Really, he was at the gas station. There's nobody really to identify him at that point. He could have just been driving by.
Yep.
Yeah. However, it's weird because they know he was at the gas station. That car was. So if he wasn't, I don't know why they didn't investigate further.
I don't either. You would think they would have.
Maybe this whole case got swept under the rug because here they go. You got the police. They get some kid that just moved from Oregon. There's so many other murders in Northern California, right? We have talked about this. Northern California in the 70s was a hotbed for serial killers and murderers, right?
That is true. You could look that up online. And for some strange reason, serial killers decided to live in Northern California between the 60s and 80s.
Yeah.
And it was just like the hotbed of, I want to kill somebody, I'm moving to Northern California.
Yeah.
And it's the 70s, and people don't want to talk about it, but women were just starting to get rights. Right? They're women.
Yes.
So there's a unwed young girl found dead. Her stack goes to the bottom. There's not a lot of suspects. They have other crimes to go work on. You hate to say it, but more than likely her paperwork went to the bottom.
And
when they sent a detective out, did a couple leads, looked, I got other stuff I'm working on.
And we're talking about like police in different jurisdictions. So she was murdered in one county. She lived in a second county, and that car, the Oldsmobile, was in a third county.
Correct.
So we have multiple jurisdictions maybe competing or getting angry or being lazy or whatever it is, or passing the buck to the other jurisdiction. There's just not a lot of communication.
Correct.
So there's a lot of things that just we failed her as a community,
yes.
right?
And
So-
that's why things have gotten so much better by 2024 than it was in 1971.
Okay, and I don't want to say, it was like this, but you didn't have the amount of police officers that you do today. They weren't there. You didn't have the funding behind it.
Correct.
Yeah, and like we were talking before, they had all of these new techniques were just being developed in the 70s, right?
It's very easy to point the fingers nowadays at somebody and go, hey, it's the cop's fault. Hey, it's that person's fault. But it's really nobody's fault. It was just the way things were.
Yeah.
Back then.
Again, without DNA, without all that kind of stuff, they followed up on a couple leads. Okay, we'll work on it. And it went into the pile.
Yeah.
Because I know her family pushed for a long time to find out what happened. And they just didn't have any forensics. They had no leads. They had nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's crazy. No fingerprints, no bullet casings.
Even the license plate doesn't really commit him of a crime. That just shows he was at the gas station.
That's true.
That is true.
Doesn't put him at the murder scene, puts him at the gas station.
And if you're a cop and you're getting a phone call from somebody in Oregon, it's much easier to push them off than if somebody's at your desk
Yeah.
saying, I want to see some results here.
And again, not that she was a bad person. She was an unwed mother out dancing in a club. She ends up dead. She's from another state. She's not married. That's a low priority.
Right. And how many people here knew her?
Yeah.
Like, how many advocates did she really have? She was here for a few months, right? So, like, nobody's putting pressure on the police.
And back then, you couldn't put a lot of pressure on the police. They just said, go away.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was the attitude, too. Will you do something, please? And then they're like, we've got it covered.
We're investigating.
Yeah, so.
Then on October 31st, 2003, El Dorado County authorities issued an arrest warrant alleging first-degree murder by a prison inmate they suspected was tied to Betty's murder. That inmate was Thompson.
Why do these guys always have three names? I don't know.
On April 19th, 2008, after hearing more than 6 weeks of testimony, it only took an El Dorado County jury 7 hours to conclude that Philip Arthur Thompson was the man who brutally murdered a young woman nearly 4 decades ago in Cameron Park. The panel of 4 men and 8 women found that the 62-year-old acted and premeditated and malice when he, at the age of 25, shot Betty Cloer 3 times before bludgeoning her face beyond recognition.
Horrible.
The verdict finally brought closure to Betty's family, but the question of why will always be unanswered.
He was in and out of prison since the 80s. And it's only because of DNA that they actually caught him for this.
Correct.
In researching this case, there are 2 other women that died a similar way within a year of this case and around the same area. But they never tried to connect him to those because we never found any research or documentation for that.
And those murders are still unsolved, right?
They're both cold cases.
Yeah, okay.
But they were killed the same way. Bludgeoning face, sexual assault, found in like the Cameron Park or at least within 10 miles of that area. I'm thinking, hello.
Seems not random.
No, it doesn't.
That's crazy. So now we've gotten to the end of this particular episode, and we've introduced you to Philip Arthur Thompson and what a dirtbag he was. And you may ask yourself, why are we even doing this podcast? You may ask, how did you know all about this way back in 1996? Well, the truth of the matter is that I was adopted at birth, and in my early 30s, I discovered that my biological father was Philip Arthur Thompson. Now, it was mind-blowing to me then, and it's still just as crazy to me as the day that I discovered this back in 1996. But there is so much more to this story that we're going to unravel for you. We're going to talk about my adoption, how I discovered Philip Arthur Thompson was my biological father, and we're going to go down all the rabbit holes that should seriously shock you.
So you knew Philip Arthur Thompson was your father.
I did.
Before he was convicted of this murder.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Crazy.
Yeah. So
but he was in jail.
No,
he was in
you
jail.
knew he was a criminal.
I knew he was a criminal. I knew he was in jail.
But it just got worse after you found out.
Oh, yeah. His story just starts to unravel, and you're going down rabbit holes that you have no idea. That's why we're doing this podcast.
Yeah.
It's really, really nuts.
We're going to give you the idea.
And the other thing is, it is so hard to try to tell this story because as soon as you go one direction, it takes you in another direction. And so it's mind blowing, actually.
It's almost like you're just giving us a taste of what really is coming.
Yeah. The Betty Cloer thing for most people introduces Philip Arthur Thompson as a killer. And soon you will discover why we call him the Octopus Hitman.